Today on The Report, Hurricane Fiona leaves a trail of destruction in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, and construction begins on the world's largest underwater tunnel.
Nancy Pelosi condemns Azerbaijan's attacks on Armenia, and President Biden makes controversial statements in his interview with 60 Minutes.
Plus, Governor Gavin Newsom signs a new law to protect minors on social media. The Report starts now.
Hello, I'm Anthony Bautista.
I'm Elmira Darmanian.
And I'm Enrique Medina. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Report CSUF or on our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV CSUF to keep in touch with us and view our new content.
Hurricane Fiona is continuing its catastrophic path after devastating Puerto Rico with flash floods and power failures. Since it reached Puerto Rico on the 18th of September, the hurricane has wreaked havoc, cutting power and water service for most of the island's 3.1 million residents. This left the U.S. territory in a blackout, similar to the effects of Hurricane Maria in 2017. Hurricane Fiona then proceeded to sweep through the Dominican Republic, where 1 million people were left without running water and dozens of homes were destroyed. At least 800 people were brought to safety by emergency workers, and 519 people are taking refuge in the country's 29 shelters. However, officials have confirmed that 5 people have died across the Caribbean as a result of the storm. Since moving away from the Dominican Republic, the hurricane is now battering the Turks and Caicos Islands, forcing officials to issue a shelter-in-place order. Hurricane Fiona is expected to escalate to a Category 4 storm with sustained winds of 130 to 156 miles per hour. So now I'll ask you guys, how do you guys think the U.S. can better assist Puerto Rico during this difficult time?
So I definitely think that as far as what we can do starts with FEMA, which stands for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So back in 2017 with Hurricane Maria, at least according to Commissioner on the U.S. Commission of Civil Rights, Michael Yaki, mentioned that they felt like they didn't really do a good job providing Spanish resources, especially that it's a Latin-speaking community, also helping out those people with disabilities and those who had just health conditions in general. So my question starts with, what is FEMA's role in this, and how can they better assist Puerto Rico in this difficult time? Another thing that's very important to mention is representation. We only have one U.S. representative from Puerto Rico in Congress, which is Representative Jennifer Gonzalez Colon. So on the federal level, what can we do to actually help Puerto Rico in this difficult time?
Well, I'm glad you brought up representation. I agree, if Puerto Rico is going to be considered a part of the U.S., they need to have the same representation federally that U.S. citizens on the mainland have. Like, for example, they can't vote on federal issues, like they can't vote for the president. There needs to be some sort of bridge for that, and FEMA can help provide that bridge. They can help provide resources that we saw provided to states like Texas and Florida when they went through their hurricane issues in the past few years. Puerto Rico and their citizens should have access to those same resources that were given to U.S. citizens, which is what the citizens of Puerto Rico should be considered, considering that it's a U.S. territory.
Yeah, and just to put this into perspective, at least according to Wednesday morning, about 500,000 people didn't have any access to water, and only 27% of people on Wednesday morning from those who have electricity were able to regain it back. So this is a process that's not just going to take a few days. This is going to take weeks and even months. So us as the U.S., we have a pivotal role in making sure that Puerto Rico gets back to where it should be. After over a decade of planning, Denmark and Germany are beginning construction on the world's largest immersed tunnel, 40 meters beneath the Baltic Sea. Spanning just over 11 miles and projected to cost around $7 billion, the tunnel will cut travel times and improve commerce between Denmark and Germany. Built across the Fehmarn Belt to connect German islands of Fehmarn and the Danish island of Lolland, it will provide an alternative to the current ferry service in place. The ferry carries millions of passengers every year and takes about 45 minutes, not including the time spent in line to board. A lot of travelers just fly between the two countries to save themselves a hassle. However, the same trip will now take just 7 minutes by train and 10 minutes by car. The project dates back all the way back to 2008 when Germany and Denmark signed a treaty over its construction, but necessary legislation and studies needed to be carried out beforehand. Completion of the tunnel will take almost as long as the preparations did, with the opening expected by the year 2029. So guys, in regards to this project, absolutely phenomenal idea between these two countries. The one thing I wanted to ask you guys in regards to this is more in regards to the time and the people actually working in this project. Do we actually think it's worth it in regards to time and the people who are going to be working in this project?
I personally think that it is 100% worth it because people in Europe usually traveled, as you mentioned, by plane, by car, which is not that ecologically friendly. So if we just put enough finance into something that can be ecologically friendly, like this tunnel, which is, I don't think we have something like that, it's going to be such a convenient way to travel for people. So I 100% agree with this idea, and I think it's worth it.
I agree simply for the fact of convenience. This will help a lot of people. This will help people get jobs. I mean, this thing needs to get built, so this will provide help for the economy as well as the environment. So I think this is just a win-win all around. And while I know this is set to take a lot of time to be built, I know it's set to be finished in 2029. This is a bridge that, according to Femer Link contractors, the board chairman said that it's supposed to last over 120 years. So this is an investment, you know what I mean? It's going to take some time to build, but in the long run, it'll be worth it for the citizens that go across that bridge.
That's actually really unbelievable. I think if there was one doubt to really consider in this whole process, it's just, is it really going to be ready by 2029? But regardless, this is an absolutely unbelievable project, and a project that, like you mentioned, 120 years, that's absolutely unbelievable. So if it could really last that long and help people get from one country to another very conveniently, and it's totally worth it, however long it takes.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is going to be worth, like, in the question of convenience, and I hope if they try hard enough, they're going to end the project by 2029. In other news, while on her trip to Armenia, Nancy Pelosi condemned Azerbaijan's illegal and deadly attacks that led to conflict on the border. The recent fighting that occurred between Armenia and Azerbaijan marks the most serious conflict since their war in 2020. According to the United Nations, 105 Armenian service members were killed, while Azerbaijan's reported the deaths of 71 of their own service members. Both countries blame the other for the most recent violence. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged the president of Azerbaijan to cease the attacks and to resolve all issues through peaceful negotiations with Armenia. Pelosi arrived in Armenia on Sunday the 18th after the ceasefire was announced. A joint news conference was held with Armenian National Assembly President Alan Simonyan. It was during this conference that Pelosi said the attacks were clearly initiated by Azerbaijan and she urges them to stop. Pelosi added that the United States should show support for Armenia. Addressing the recent conflict, Pelosi has vowed that Armenia and the United States would, quote, work together on what the next steps may be, end of quote. Turkish Vice President Fuat Oktay criticized Pelosi's statements as describing them as biased and claiming that they sabotage diplomacy efforts, end of quote. So, what do you guys think about Pelosi visiting Armenia during the ceasefire that is happening and making these statements?
Well, I think it's very powerful and it shows a sense of unity, but it also shows a sense of like that American people need to be made aware of this situation because this goes back far beyond 2020 as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it right there. Ultimately, when it comes to this situation, like you mentioned, it's been going on for a long time. And ultimately, what matters is that people are aware of what's going on.
As an Armenian whose heart terribly aches for people and for the homeland, I think that the least I can do and all the Armenian people can do is bring people's attention to what's happening and let them know the truth. I think that situation, as you've mentioned, it has been going almost for 30 years, and I'm glad people are finally paying attention. Azerbaijan and Turkey are allies in this war, and they're trying to take the lands that were historically never theirs. And the only thing I can say in regards to this situation is if Azerbaijan puts their weapons down, it's going to be peace, but if Armenia does it, it's going to be genocide. So I believe that I hope the situation will resolve in the most peaceful manner and they will be able to negotiate it with Armenia without war and any actions.
Hopefully you're right, for sure. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi isn't the only politician to make bold statements this week. On Sunday, the 18th, President Joe Biden made quite the surprising appearance on the oldest and most watched news magazine show, 60 Minutes. The U.S. leader practically never holds news conferences or partakes in long, wide-ranging interviews, so this was an unusual move for him. In the interview, President Biden made a number of bold and somewhat controversial statements. Among them, he made his stance clear regarding the coronavirus pandemic, the potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan, and the Russia-Ukraine war. To start off, Biden declared, quote, "We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it, but the pandemic is over," end quote. Whether the pandemic is officially over or not, the U.S. citizens continue to return to a more normal life. American deaths from the virus have surpassed 1 million in number, but nearly everyone now has some level of immunity and or access to the vaccination. On another controversial topic, Biden reiterated that U.S. forces would in fact defend Taiwan if the Chinese military were to launch an invasion. He even went as far as to say that U.S. men and women would rise to the occasion and join the fight. Lastly, Biden made it clear that the U.S. would, quote, punish Russia if Putin resorts to the use of chemical or nuclear weapons in the war against Ukraine. The White House was quick to perform damage control, however, downplaying his strong comments. So guys, when we think of, 60-minute interviews, Joe Biden doesn't really typically do these things. And he had very strong comments. In particular, he had a very strong comment in regards to COVID, saying that the pandemic is over. So I want to get your guys' thoughts. Do we actually agree with that? Do we actually agree that the pandemic is over, quote unquote?
Honestly, in my opinion, I think that people got used to it, and we are as aware as we can be of it, and future generations will treat COVID as just a flu, but currently, I don't think it's completely resolved. It's still an issue, and people should still be kind of cautious about it. What do you think?
I agree. I feel like every time any official comes out and says that we have a grip on this thing or that we have it figured out, a mutation of some sort will come up or something. Another layer gets added to this, the COVID mess. I think it's way too early to say whether anything's under control right now, especially considering that the 7-day moving average of daily deaths in the U.S. is around 400 people per day, and that has plateaued at this level since April. So I think it's hard for the president to say that it's over when numbers like this are remaining around the same for the last few months. It's also very concerning that he said that it's over, but in the same quote he mentioned earlier that they have a problem still. So it's a little misleading if you ask me.
Oh yeah, you bring up a great point. I also wanted to ask you guys in regards to the comments between U.S. intervention with Taiwan and China. So I wanted to ask you guys, he made a comment that U.S. men and women would help in the fight if China were to invade Taiwan. So I wanted to ask you guys, what do we think about that whole situation?
I don't think it's the right kind of comment that you can leave about the whole situation, because you can speak for everyone and people can have different opinions. What do you think about it?
I think it's very a little concerning that Biden is trying to flex the U.S. military's muscles or whatever he's trying to do here. I think there's other ways to go about this. We don't have to automatically assume that violence is the answer. Like we just talked about supporting peace abroad. So I think we should be supporting peace when it comes to other situations, such as Taiwan and Ukraine.
Yeah, and in regards to this situation, the Taiwan Relations Act essentially obligates the U.S. to help Taiwan by providing them financial resources, military equipment, things of that nature. So I say, why can't we just continue doing that instead of having to intervene and actually send out men and women, send out the troops to actually go fight? I say, why not just continue the way we're doing it right now?
I agree.
That's a great point you bring up. I agree with you. Looking at California now, Governor Gavin Newsom signed the California Age-Appropriate Design Code Act on September 15th, a law which aims to protect children's well-being online. The law will require social media apps like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook to study products and features likely to be accessed by minors and weaken any potential harm before releasing them to the public. The bill received bipartisan support in the Assembly and the State Senate, although another law with a similar goal was rejected by the California legislature last month. In one section of the bill presented, social media companies could be banned from using precise geolocation tracking unless the minor is notified of how their data is used and how it could affect their mental health. Moreover, suppose social media companies violate these rules. In that case, they could face injunctions on their products and be fined up to $7,500 per impacted child if any violation was found to be intentional. A spokeswoman for Facebook and Instagram owner Meta Platforms Inc. opposes the bill. However, she understands the concerns around some of the law's provisions, and that is an important step towards establishing standards. So how do you guys feel about this law? Do you guys think this will protect minors? And do you guys think this violates the First Amendment?
Yeah, I think ultimately when it comes down to it, minors, especially teenagers, they're very curious and they want to find out about certain products and just a lot of different things. And really when it comes down to it, it comes with good reason just to protect minors from, harmful sort of objects or things like that, products, and we need to make sure they're always taken care of. So I think it comes with very good reason. I think the only question that really comes about is how will they react to it?
Yeah, I mean, all of us were minors at some point, so I believe they're going to be kind of against it at first because they will feel like adults are restricting them too much. But at the end of the day, they will say thank you to us in the future because we're just taking care of them.
I agree. There needs to be some sort of standard set to protect minors because at the end of the day, they are minors. Their brains aren't fully developed. They don't know what's best for them quite yet. And you don't know what kind of misinformation or like harmful products could be advertised and geared towards them that they might not even know. Another thing, I don't think that this violates the First Amendment simply because, like I said, they're minors. They're not fully developed yet. I don't think they should have First Amendment rules protected for them until they're 18. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. It makes sense.
Really good points.
In campus news, we'd like to draw attention to the services of the Veterans Resource Center, the VRC. Elizabeth Lieberman, a senior majoring in psychology and a veteran dependent herself, works at the VRC assisting veterans, their dependents, and military-connected students to find resources and support on campus. The VRC also hosts Vet Forward, a program focused on life after graduation, including professional workshops and assistance with job applications. Lieberman has become passionate about helping veterans and plans to pursue her master's degree in social work, with hopes of entering the counseling field and using her experience at the VRC to work in the military. The VRC is open at Gordon Hall 244 from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for today.
Have a good week, everyone, and stay tuned for more views, news, and info.
We'll see you next time on The Report.